Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Friday, April 26th, 2024. It's time for the Intelligence Community Roundtable. Ray McGovern is here. Matt Ho is substituting for the vacationing Larry Johnson. I'm kidding. He's not vacationing. He spoke to the United Nations Security Council earlier today. If you want to see what and hear what Larry said, we have posted it on the YouTube channel under the videos. You'll see it. It's a fascinating comment that Matt and Ray and I were privileged to see before he actually made the comments. To the issues at hand, gentlemen, let me start with you, Matt. What is the state of affairs in Ukraine as we speak with respect to the military? Even the Wall Street Journal reports that almost no matter what the U.S. sends over there, they really lack the manpower to use it.
Well, it's been said over and over again, including on this channel, Judge, that no matter how much money the U.S. and the Europeans send to Ukraine, if there aren't men to pull the triggers, it doesn't matter. You know, you can send them all the money, all the bombs, all the weapons you need, but if you don't have men on the ground doing the killing and the dying, it doesn't matter. And that's what we're seeing now really play out in Ukraine. There were a couple developments in terms of how the Ukrainians are handling their draft laws. I think people are aware that they expanded their draft, lowered the age so that anyone 25 and above is now eligible for the draft, as well as commitments to strengthen that process to bring people into the Ukrainian military. But Ukrainians are also looking at Ukrainians who are overseas. So the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry is tightening the rules, basically trying to get Ukrainian men who are overseas have their passports expire and then be kicked out and sent back home. And their Ukrainians are also on a full press of their allies to send these people back. And this morning on Al Jazeera, I saw an interview with the Polish defense minister who basically said, we'll do everything we can to send these Ukrainian men back to Ukraine. And just on a personal note, I had work done on my house, Judge, this week. And two of the guys that were here doing the work were Ukrainian men who came from Ukraine after Russia invaded. And, being with these guys for a couple of days, they were so hardworking. They were such good men. And the idea that they would be sent into that slaughter for nothing is so appalling. It's so disgusting and so disturbing. When you actually have that, when you have that type of personal connection with someone, to understand that people are being lost in this unwinnable war, this proxy war, to be used as pawns for an imperial project. But in your question, Ukraine is not in good shape, and this is what we've been saying, we've been expecting.
So, what good will the 61 billion do, Ray? We know that about 40 of it is going to stay here. In fact, just as we came on air, CNN reports that Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of Defense, announces $6 billion long-term military aid package for Ukraine. I guess that means $6 billion for his former employer, Raytheon, because if it's a long-term package, that means it doesn't exist yet, and they're going to pay Raytheon to build it because they somehow think there will still be a Ukrainian government and Ukrainian military left by the time Raytheon builds it. But I'll let you take it from there, Ray.
Well, Judge, you put your finger right on it. This is not about Ukraine. It's about two things. It's about an attempt, however frivolous, to weaken Russia, which had just the opposite effect. And it's a successful attempt to feed the military-industrial complex, of which Lloyd Austin, of course, is an exemplar. And they made it very clear. Biden himself, 80% of their money is staying right here. It's going to be building factories. It's going to give jobs. Give me a break. That's what it's all about. He needed to do that before the election. Now, with respect to the situation on the ground, you have various pundits now. One of whom, his name's George Beebe. He used to be a high-level official on Russia in the CIA after my time. But 2 months ago, he said, no, we got to keep giving this defensive aid, and we got to keep But what did he say 2 days ago? What he said 2 days ago was, if Washington, no, listen to this now. If Washington were intentionally to design a formula for Ukraine's destruction, it might look a lot like the aid package passed by Congress this week.
Wow.
Whoa. Has he end up?
What a profound and realistic criticism.
Yeah, now, and this is a guy who months ago, I'm sorry, said, oh, yeah, we got to keep going. So here he finishes up. The new aid is spending that lacks a coherent plan for making it effective. This makes it a formula for prolonging, not ending the war. It will almost guarantee that Ukraine will continue throwing its reserves of manpower into a war it cannot win, and which is wreaking ever more havoc on Ukraine's infrastructure, blah, blah, blah. It's a waste of money, and even more disturbingly, a waste of the kind of Ukrainian lives that at least the people working on Matt's house are not liable to lose because they're here.
The people working on your house have a colleague, and she's in the House of Representatives. There is a female Republican member of the House of Representatives who was born in Ukraine and came over here at age 10, and she voted against the aid to Ukraine. I don't know her name. I was with Congressman Andy Biggs this morning, and he mentioned it to me that we should probably interview her. She not only voted against it, Matt, they gave them 5 minutes of time. She spoke against it. She got 1 minute of the 5. I asked Tony Schaefer, whom we all know, the other day, how many Americans are on the ground in Ukraine, military and intelligence, and he gave me a number that Ritter disputes. So I want to ask the two of you about that number. Tony says there are 15,000 Americans on the ground, military out of uniform, intel, whatever the intel folks wear, and other personnel. Could the number be that big, Matt?
I don't know, Judge. It sounds, certainly if you go back and you just saw me raise my eyebrows when you said that, but
yeah,
I don't know, Judge. I don't think so. I think in terms of actual members of the U.S. forces that are there, both overt and covert, you're looking at well under 1,000. But when you start adding in contractors, you start adding in mercenaries, you start adding in volunteers, this number is going to start to climb. And like even in our own wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, the last half of those, you were looking at roughly a ratio of 2-to-1, 3-to-1, 4-to-1 of contractors to soldiers. So much of warfare nowadays is privatized. You use vendors, you use contractors, you use outside technical help, as they'll call it, to fill the roles that were normally or previously done by those in uniform. So I don't know if it's that high as 15,000, but I think what the actual number is probably much higher than most of us actually think. But we know that this government of ours is willing to lie about it. We saw just this week that it was revealed that the United States government was sending long-range ATACMS missiles to Ukraine without the public's knowledge, let alone the Congress's knowledge. Not that the Congress would probably do anything about it. Yeah. So, the idea that this government, our government, would have people over there and not be honest about it is, I think, everything that all of us accept. Now, I want to go back to Ukraine, to that point you made about that Ukrainian member of Congress, Judge, and about the two men that I got to know this week. Neither of them were in favor of this war. But the way our media here in the United States makes it sound out is that all of Ukraine is behind the war. And we've seen public opinion polling coming out of Ukraine that shows it's just not true. First of all, more than half of Ukrainians say they understand why people avoid the draft, why they dodge the draft. 54% of Ukrainians say that they understand that. And basically, more than half of Ukrainians are saying the Ukrainian war is not worth dying for.
More than half say that.
More than half, 54% of Ukrainians say they understand why Ukrainian men avoid the draft, which again, essentially is saying it's not worth dying for. And the other poll that came out, Judge, as well, these are both at the end of March, that came out, found that 44% of Ukrainians thought that Ukraine should fight to the end and fight to defeat Russia and take back all its territory. But 46% felt that Ukraine should negotiate an end to the war. So there are more Ukrainians in Ukraine who feel that negotiations are the right way forward, as there are Ukrainians who feel that this is a war that needs to be fought to some type of victorious conclusion.
Here's the Congresswoman, Victoria Spartz, Spartz, born in Ukraine. So she's a dual Ukraine-American citizen, Republican from Indiana's 5th District, who proudly and defiantly joined the majority of her countrymen, according to what you just said, Matt, if the polls are accurate, in opposing the American military aid. Ray, how many Intel operatives, American, do you think are on the ground there? And what other countries would have Intel operatives on the ground? We know the Brits are. They go wherever the Americans go. But who else would be there?
Well, I would say between the Brits and the Americans, they probably have about 2,000 case officers. These are the people that run the agents, run the Ukrainian agents and others. With respect to others, the Israelis are certainly there. The French and the Germans, they all have their people there. But the big players, of course, are the UK, MI6, which is pretty much drafting Zelensky's speeches, I'm told. He's a really good actor. He sticks to his script when he does, and he's really great. Okay, so the UK does that.
Talking about Zelensky, doesn't his term expire in 2024? And didn't he cancel the elections? I mean, is he going to try and stay on beyond his term?
Well, he is, and we're only a couple of weeks away from, I think it's April 21st. Is that when it expires, Matt? Do you recall?
I believe it's May 1st, which is next Wednesday.
Okay, so he'll be illegal then, and that should change things. In other words, Putin looks at things in a very legalistic way. And if a fellow refuses to obey its constitution and capriciously, without the support of the rest of the major players in Ukraine, says, I'm still going to be president, well, that puts him in a more vulnerable position than before. I can hardly believe that people like Blinken believe that we can win here. I think that unless they're completely dumb, they can't believe that. And what I would cite, and I do this because a lot of people say, well, where do you get this stuff, McGovern?
Go ahead.
9 years ago, when Obama said, look, the worst thing we can do is to give the Ukrainians the idea that they could beat in a military battle the far more strong Russians. Okay. And here's what Blinken said at the same time. Mark my words, or mark Blinken's words. Military terrain in Ukraine, you're playing to Russia's strength. Anything we do as countries in terms of providing military support for Ukraine is likely to be matched and then doubled and then tripled and then quadrupled by Russia. Therefore, my President Obama is quite right in saying we shouldn't supply offensive weaponry to Ukraine. What was the date? Was March 5th, 2015. So 9 years ago, and all of a sudden everything changes. The terrain and Russia. Give me a break. Blinken, I don't know what he believes, but he can't believe two things at the same time. What he said 9 years ago,
right,
and what he's saying now.
Now, when he said that 9 years ago, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe he was either the chief foreign policy advisor or chief of staff for Vice President Biden. So he
Actually, he was Deputy Secretary of State.
Okay, even deeper into the State Department establishment. For him to have made a statement like that